A family found a dirty puppy by the side of a stormy mountain road. When they realized what it really was, they screamed. What they thought was a helpless animal turned out to be something no one could explain, something that should never have been there. A mother's instinct tells her to protect it, but every call for help brings new danger to her door. Someone out there wants it back. Badly. The sheriff's too eager to take it. The men in the trucks keep circling their house, and the clues hidden in her late husband's old notes point to a truth darker than anyone imagined. Every second counts as she races to keep her children, and this innocent life, safe from people who will do anything to silence her. But when every road out of town is watched, and every ally may be a trap, what will she risk to protect the one thing she was never meant to find? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The evening rain drummed against the windshield as Lenore Briggs guided her old station wagon along the winding Colorado road. Her children, Ruthie and Miles, pressed their faces against the foggy windows, watching lightning split the darkening sky. "Mom, look!" Ruthie's voice cut through the steady patter of rain. "There's something in that culvert." Lenore squinted through the streaked glass, catching a glimpse of movement in the concrete drainage pipe. Her foot eased onto the brake. "What is it, honey?" "I think it's a puppy." Miles joined in, his small hands gripping the seat. "It's shivering." The maternal instinct that had served Lenore well through years of nursing kicked in. She pulled onto the muddy shoulder, putting the car in park. "Stay here," she instructed, reaching for her rain jacket. But of course they didn't listen. Both children scrambled out after her, their sneakers splashing in puddles as they approached the culvert. The bundle inside squirmed weakly, wrapped in what looked like a dirty blanket. Lenore crouched down, reaching carefully toward the shivering mass. "Easy now," she whispered, her gentle hands closing around the bundle. As she lifted it, something slipped in her grasp. A tiny hand, pink and perfect, fell free from the muddy wrapping. 3 screams pierced the storm's rumble. Lenore nearly dropped the bundle but caught herself, maternal instincts overwhelming shock. "Oh my God," she breathed, pulling the blanket back further to reveal a newborn's face, crusted with mud, and her stomach lurched, gagged with cloth. "Mom!" Ruthie's voice quavered. "Is that—" "Back to the car now," Lenore commanded, already moving. Her mind raced through protocols ingrained from years of home health care. The baby was cold. Too cold. They needed warmth, clean supplies, proper care. Immediately. The drive home passed in a blur of windshield wipers and tense silence. As soon as they pulled into their driveway, Lenore's training took over. "Miles, put water on to boil. Ruthie, get all the clean blankets you can find." The kitchen table became a makeshift exam station. Lenore's hands moved with practiced efficiency, clearing away their half-finished dinner dishes. She laid out clean towels, her movements quick but gentle as she unwrapped the suffering infant. "The poor little thing," she murmured, carefully removing the cruel gag. The baby's cry, though weak, was the sweetest sound she'd heard. It meant life. Fight, hope. Working methodically, she cleaned away mud and grime, checking vital signs and looking for injuries. As she wiped the baby's shoulder, she paused. There, shaped like a teardrop, was a distinctive amber birthmark. Miles appeared at her elbow with sterilized bottles. "Is it going to be okay?" "She," Lenore corrected softly, recognizing the infant's gender. "And yes, I think so. She's cold and hungry, but strong." Ruthie returned, arms full of blankets. "Mom, should we call Sheriff Kopp?" The name sent a chill down Lenore's spine, that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. Dale Kopp had been sheriff since before her husband's death, and his reputation for handling problems quietly had always unsettled her. The way certain cases just disappeared. The way questions went unanswered. Thunder rattled the windows, making them all jump. The baby whimpered, and Lenore tucked another warm blanket around her. "Not yet," she said, watching the infant's breathing steady. "Let's make sure she's stable first." But that wasn't the whole truth. As she worked, her eyes kept straying to the flyer magneted to their refrigerator. The Whitcomb family's missing granddaughter. She'd seen that notice everywhere for weeks. The wealthy family's trucking empire meant their tragedy had made headlines across the state. Lenore looked back at the birthmark on the baby's shoulder, then at the flyer again. The description was there in black and white. Distinctive amber-colored birthmark, shoulder area. Her heart beat faster as pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just any abandoned infant. This was the missing Whitcomb baby, and someone had tried to hide her in that culvert. The storm raged outside, but inside Lenore's mind, clarity was dawning. She couldn't call Kopp, not yet, maybe not at all. First, she needed to protect this child, to understand what she'd stumbled into. Her nursing experience told her the baby needed at least 24 hours of careful monitoring. That would give her time to think, to plan. "Mom?" Miles's serious face appeared beside her. "What are we going to do?" Lenore looked at her son, then at Ruthie, seeing their father's courage in their concerned expressions. Finally, she gazed down at the now peaceful infant, tiny fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. "We're going to help her," Lenore said firmly. "That's what we're going to do." She reached for another bottle, warming it carefully against her wrist. The baby's cry grew stronger, more demanding, a healthy sign. As Lenore fed her, she felt the weight of her decision settling onto her shoulders. She didn't know exactly what path lay ahead, but she knew she'd chosen the right one. This child needed protection, and somehow she would provide it. The kitchen windows rattled with another thunderclap, but this time no one jumped. They were too focused on the miracle before them, a tiny life found in the storm, bringing with it a mystery that would change everything. Ruthie touched the baby's hand with gentle fingers. "She's so small." "But fierce," Lenore added, watching the infant grip Ruthie's finger. "Just like someone else I know." Miles leaned against his mother's side, his usual quiet self, but his presence was supportive and strong. Together they watched the baby finish her bottle, her color improving with each passing minute. Outside, the storm continued its assault on their small Colorado town. But inside their kitchen, a different kind of storm was brewing, one of determination, protection, and the fierce love of a family choosing to stand against the darkness, no matter the cost. Lenore's fingers hovered over her phone, Sheriff Kopp's number glaring from the screen. Something didn't feel right. Her husband had always taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every fiber of her being screamed that calling Kopp would be a mistake. Instead, she pulled up the Whitcomb family's reward notice and dialed the emergency contact number. Her heart pounded as the phone rang 3 times. "Virginia Whitcomb speaking." The voice was crisp, authoritative. "Mrs. Whitcomb, my name is Lenore Briggs. She swallowed hard. "I believe I may have found your granddaughter." A sharp intake of breath. "Explain. Everything." Lenore described finding the baby, the birthmark, her current condition. Virginia listened without interruption, then spoke with careful control. "I'm sending someone I trust completely. My grandson, Calder. He manages the Double W Ranch south of town. Do you know him?" "Yes," Lenore said, relief flooding through her. Calder Whitcomb had helped her family last winter when their truck broke down during a snowstorm. He'd been kind, capable, and somehow different from the polished corporate world his family represented. Good. He'll be there within 30 minutes. And Mrs. Briggs, thank you for calling me first. While they waited, Miles wandered the kitchen, examining the muddy bundle they'd brought in with the baby. "Mom!" he called suddenly. "There's something weird here." Lenore joined him, watching as his small fingers worked at a tiny, hard spot in the fabric. Her blood ran cold as he extracted what looked like a miniature computer chip, barely larger than a grain of rice. "A tracking device," she whispered, her nurse's training recognizing the technology similar to what veterinarians used. Someone had tagged this baby like an animal, expecting to find her later. Her hands shook as she dialed the sheriff's office. Protocol demanded she report finding an abandoned infant. But she kept the call brief and vague, mentioning nothing about the Whitcomb connection. Cop arrived in less than 10 minutes, far too quickly for someone who should have been across the county at this hour. His squad car's lights stayed dark as he pulled up. "Evening, Lenore," he said, stepping into her kitchen. His eyes swept the room with unsettling precision, as if he already knew what he was looking for. "Quite a storm to be out rescuing babies in." "We couldn't just leave her there," Lenore said, keeping her voice steady as she cradled the infant. "She's stable now, but she'll need proper medical attention soon." "I'll take her to the hospital myself," Cop offered, reaching out. The baby whimpered, and Lenore instinctively stepped back. "I'm a registered nurse, Sheriff. I'd prefer to monitor her condition personally until we can arrange proper transport." The crunch of tires on gravel announced another arrival. Calder Whitcomb's tall frame filled the doorway, rain dripping from his jacket. His quiet presence seemed to alter the atmosphere in the room. "Evening, Dale," he said, positioning himself casually between Cop and Lenore. "Grandmother sent me to assist with the situation." Cop's expression flickered. "The Whitcombs involved already? This is a county matter, Calder." "A missing infant is everybody's matter," Calder replied evenly. He turned to Lenore, his voice lowering. "Troy Voss has been running unauthorized routes with company trucks. Grandmother's been gathering evidence, but he's got friends in interesting places." The implication hung heavy in the air. Lenore thought of her husband's final investigation into transport accidents, the questions he'd been asking about the Whitcomb shipping routes before his death. Cop's questions grew more pointed. Where exactly had they found the baby? Had anyone else been around? Had they noticed any vehicles? Lenore kept her answers focused solely on the infant's medical needs, playing up her professional concern. "She's still at risk for hypothermia. Every minute we spend talking is time we should be monitoring her vitals." The tracking chip felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. Combined with Cop's suspiciously quick arrival and odd intensity, it painted a disturbing picture. Someone had planned to recover this baby tonight, and that someone had connections to both the sheriff's department and the Whitcomb transportation empire. Calder seemed to read her thoughts. "The house isn't secure," he said quietly when Cop stepped outside to make a call. "Too exposed, too many access points. We need to move her at first light." Lenore nodded, watching Cop through the window. The sheriff was speaking urgently into his phone, his back deliberately turned away from the house. "Where?" "I know a place," Calder said. "Somewhere even Troy doesn't know about. But we'll need to be careful." "Very careful." The baby stirred in Lenore's arms, her tiny fingers clutching at nothing. Lenore caught them gently, making a silent promise. Whatever web they'd stumbled into, whatever dangers lurked in the storm-dark night, she would protect this child. She had to. Miles pressed against her side, his young face serious. "Mom, are the bad guys coming?" She met Calder's steady gaze over her son's head. "Maybe," she said honestly, "but we're not going to let them win." Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away their tracks from the culvert. But Lenore knew some trails couldn't be erased so easily. By saving this child, they'd stumbled onto something much bigger and much more dangerous than a simple abandonment. The tracking device in her pocket proved that. Now they just had to survive until morning. While Calder kept watch by the window, Lenore retrieved a battered tin box from the highest kitchen shelf. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked the combination lock, her wedding anniversary date. Inside lay the last pieces of her husband Mark's life, preserved exactly as he'd left them the morning of his fatal accident. "These were Mark's investigation notes," she explained, spreading wrinkled papers across the kitchen table. "He was a local reporter, always digging into stories others ignored." Calder leaned in, studying the careful sketches of rural roads and truck routes. Dates and times were meticulously noted in the margins, along with addresses and license plate numbers. One location appeared repeatedly, a shuttered medical clinic just outside county lines. "He started noticing a pattern," Lenore continued, her voice tight. "Unmarked trucks using back roads at odd hours, missing person reports that got buried, babies vanishing from troubled families who couldn't fight back." She touched a photo of the abandoned clinic. "This place kept coming up in his research." Miles and Ruthie had fallen asleep on the couch, the rescued infant nestled securely between them. The storm's fury had settled into a steady drum of rain, making the kitchen feel like a secure island in the darkness. Calder traced one of the marked routes with his finger. "These match Troy's unauthorized shipments," he said quietly. "The timing, the locations. It's all here. Your husband was mapping out their whole operation." The realization hit Lenore like a physical blow. His accident? They said he fell asleep at the wheel, but Mark never drove tired. He was too careful, especially when working on a story. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. "This wasn't random, was it? He got too close." "No," Calder agreed grimly. "They're using legitimate shipping routes as cover for trafficking. The company's reputation makes perfect camouflage. Who questions a Whitcomb truck?" Lenore's grief crystallized into something harder, sharper. "We have to stop them. Not just for this baby, but for all the others." She pulled out her phone. "Your grandmother needs to see these." Virginia Whitcomb answered on the first ring. Lenore quickly explained about Mark's notes and their connections to Troy's activities. The old woman's response was immediate and fierce. "Those devils have been using my company, my family's name, to steal children." Virginia's voice crackled with fury and something else, a deep, pained regret. "I should have seen it, should have questioned why Troy wanted so much operational control." "We need access to shipping manifests," Calder said. "Compare them to Mark's notes. Find the pattern." "You'll have everything," Virginia promised. "I'll pull every record, every route approval, every deviation request. If they've been using my trucks to move these babies, the paper trail will show it." She paused. "And Lenore, I'm sorry about your husband. My blindness may have cost him his life." Lenore gripped the phone tighter. "Help me finish what he started. That's all I ask." While Calder made quiet calls to arrange safe transport, Lenore began mapping out their immediate steps. The baby needed proper medical care. They'd have to risk a hospital, but choose one outside COP's immediate jurisdiction. Meanwhile, Virginia would start feeding them shipping data, letting them trace the pipeline's full reach. "We're not just running anymore," she told Calder as she copied key details from Mark's notes. "We're going to choke their whole operation." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. They won't expect it. They're used to victims who can't fight back. Well, they've never met a mother who's already lost everything once, Lenore said, looking at her sleeping children and the rescued infant. I'm not losing anyone else to them. The storm was finally easing, false dawn lightening the eastern sky, but inside the kitchen, illuminated by a single lamp, the true scope of their fight was becoming clear. This wasn't just about saving one baby anymore. They were facing a coordinated criminal operation that had already killed to protect its secrets. Lenore gathered Mark's notes carefully, securing them in her medical bag alongside bottles and supplies for the baby. Each page felt weighted with purpose now. Her husband's determined investigation transformed from tragic history into a roadmap for justice. They had names, dates, locations, and soon, with Virginia's help, they'd have the corporate records to prove it all. The infant stirred, making small, snuffling sounds. Lenore lifted her gently, checking vitals that had finally stabilized. The tiny hand that gripped her finger seemed to pulse with trust and possibility. In that touch, she felt her grief and determination merge into something unshakable. Mark had died trying to expose this ring. Now she would finish what he started, using his own careful notes to dismantle the operation piece by piece. The storm outside had passed, but inside, a different kind of thunder was building, the gathering force of truth finally breaking, free. The kitchen table became their war room as midnight crept toward dawn. Lenore spread out a local map, while Calder made quiet calls on a secure line Virginia had arranged. Each ring of his phone brought another careful ally into their growing circle of trust. Got him, Calder whispered, covering the phone. Old Bill Henderson runs the ham radio network out by the county line. Says he can scramble cell signals if we need coverage. Lenore nodded, marking the location with a small X. Bill's radio tower would give them a tactical advantage if they needed to block communications. She remembered the elderly operator from her nursing rounds, sharp-minded and fiercely independent. The next call connected them to Sarah Martinez, a NICU nurse Lenore had worked with before her husband died. I can take the 7 a.m. shift, Sarah promised in hushed tones. We'll list it as a standard abandoned infant case. Minimum documentation. While they coordinated, Virginia worked her own channels. Her voice crackled through Calder's speaker with steel-edged authority. I've called an emergency board meeting for 8 a.m. sharp. The entire fleet stops until we review every manifest from the past year. Troy won't be able to move a single truck without explanation. Lenore felt the plan taking shape, multiple forces moving in careful synchronization. She checked her watch. 4:30 a.m. They had maybe 2 hours before the town started stirring. Time to move, Calder said, standing. I'll take the main highway, nice and visible. Should draw any watchers. Lenore gathered the sleeping infant, wrapping her securely in fresh blankets. Ruthie, she called softly. I need your help, sweetheart. Her daughter blinked awake, immediately alert. At 12, Ruthie had her father's quick mind and her mother's steady hands. She helped pack the baby's supplies, while Lenore wrote up generic intake notes, carefully omitting any mention of the distinctive birthmark. Miles would stay with their elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen, who'd been their backup childcare since Mark died. The boy was still too young to keep secrets reliably. They split up at 4:45 a.m. Calder headed out first, his truck taking the obvious route toward the hospital. 15 minutes later, Lenore backed her car out slowly, Ruthie in the passenger seat and the baby hidden in a modified carrier below the window line. The pre-dawn streets were silent except for the occasional newspaper delivery truck. Lenore took back roads, making 3 loops to check for tails before approaching the hospital's secondary entrance. Her hands were steady on the wheel, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Sarah met them at the service door, already wearing her scrubs. The handoff was swift and professional. No unnecessary words, no lingering. Just careful notes passed between nurses who understood the stakes. "Standard intake protocol," Lenore said meaningfully. "Nothing distinctive in the chart." Sarah nodded, cradling the infant with practiced care. "Just another sad case of abandonment. We see them every month." Ruthie watched the baby disappear into the hospital's quiet depths, her young face solemn. "Will she be safe?" "Sarah's the best," Lenore assured her, squeezing her shoulder. "And no one will look for her in plain sight." They drove home by a different route, maintaining the fiction of an early morning errand. 2 streets from their house, Lenore spotted it, a dark pickup truck idling in the shadows, its engine humming softly. She kept her expression neutral, but her pulse quickened. Not one of the regular neighborhood vehicles. Someone was watching. Once inside, she sent a single text to Calder. "We escalate." His reply came seconds later. "Virginia's lawyer is prepped. Board meets in 2 hours. They won't know what hit them." Lenore looked at the morning paper on her kitchen table, its headline about local traffic patterns suddenly seeming absurd. While the town woke to another ordinary day, they had just landed their first real blow against the trafficking ring. The baby was safe, hidden in the one place no one would think to look, right in the system itself. Virginia's corporate freeze would start unraveling Troy's careful logistics. And Mark's notes, combined with the coming audit, would finally expose the rot that had killed him. Ruthie touched her arm. "Mom, what happens next?" Lenore pulled her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "Next, we stop running and start fighting back, just like Dad would have done." Through the window, she could see the strange truck still idling, its driver invisible behind tinted glass. Let them watch, she thought. They wouldn't see what was coming until it was too late. The sun was rising now, painting the kitchen in soft golden light. In less than 3 hours, they had built a network of allies, secured the infant, and set in motion a corporate investigation that would rip open years of secrets. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was the beginning of exposure. The morning sun had barely cleared the mountains when Sheriff Kopp's cruiser pulled into Lenore's driveway, gravel crunching under its tires. She watched through the kitchen window, her hands steady as she dried the breakfast dishes. The moment they'd been bracing for had arrived. His knock was unnecessarily loud. "Mrs. Briggs, need you to come down to the station. Just a few follow-up questions about last night." Lenore opened the door, keeping the screen between them. "I've got work in an hour, Sheriff. Can this wait?" "Afraid not." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Won't take long. I'll drive you myself." Behind her, Ruthie appeared in the hallway. Lenore gave her a slight nod, their pre-arranged signal. While she kept Kopp talking, her daughter slipped away to text Calder. "Let me get my purse," Lenore said, leaving Kopp on the porch. She grabbed her bag, already packed with essentials, and whispered to Ruthie, "Mrs. Chen's house? Now!" Through the window, she spotted 2 unfamiliar vehicles crawling past. Troy's men, no doubt, covering the back routes. Her pulse quickened, but her nurse's training kept her movements calm and precise. "Ready whenever you are, Sheriff," she called out, buying precious seconds for Ruthie to slip out the back. Kopp's cruiser smelled of leather and gun oil. Lenore sat quietly in the passenger seat, watching familiar streets slide by. They weren't heading toward the station. "New route?" she asked mildly. "Roadwork," Kopp said, turning onto a service road that led toward the old industrial park. Her phone buzzed. Calder's response. He was already moving. What happened next would have seemed like chaos to anyone watching, but every piece had been carefully planned. As Copp's cruiser approached the first cattle gate, a herd of Angus beef cattle suddenly flooded across the road, led by 2 ranch hands on horseback. Copp had to slam on his brakes. "What the hell?" he growled, reaching for his radio. But the radio crackled with static. Their retired ham operator friend had started his signal jamming right on schedule. In the confusion, Lenore's door opened. Calder stood there, his ranch truck idling nearby. "Mrs. Briggs," he said formally, "your presence is required at the Whitcomb office. Board meeting emergency." Before Copp could protest, Virginia Whitcomb herself called his cell phone. Lenore couldn't hear the conversation, but watching the sheriff's face turn from red to pale told her enough. Corporate authority still outweighed his badge in this county. "This isn't over," Copp muttered as Lenore transferred to Calder's truck. "No," she agreed quietly. "It's just beginning." They took a winding route back to her house, using Calder's intimate knowledge of the ranch lands. He led them through back pastures and along fence lines, switching gates behind them to confound any followers. "Troy's got 3 teams out looking," he reported. "But they don't know these roads like I do. Been working this land since I was 12. At her house, they moved quickly. Lenore went straight to the hall closet, pulling out a dusty box of Mark's personal effects, things she hadn't been able to face since his death. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. "He knew," she whispered, pulling out a worn leather ledger. "He knew, and he was tracking them." Calder stood watch while she flipped through pages of meticulous notes. Dates, license plate numbers, delivery routes, all carefully documented in Mark's precise handwriting. The entries stopped abruptly 3 days before his accident. But it was what lay beneath the ledger that made her breath catch. A dashboard camera, carefully wrapped in soft cloth. "Mark never drove without it," she said. "Said it was insurance in his line of work. But after the accident, the police said it was too damaged to recover anything." Calder examined the device. "Looks perfectly intact to me. They lied to you, Lenore." A text from Virginia lit up Lenore's phone. "Auditors found 6 shell companies, all tied to Troy's personal accounts. Keep digging." "We need somewhere secure to review this," Lenore said, gathering the evidence. "My place," Calder decided. "Got an old workshop out back. Solid walls, 1 entrance, easy to defend." They drove separately, taking different routes to avoid being tracked together. The workshop was a sturdy building of rough-hewn timber and corrugated metal, filled with the honest smell of leather and wood. Their ham radio friend had already set up his jamming equipment, its soft hum both reassuring and somehow unsettling in the quiet space. Lenore spread Mark's ledger across Calder's workbench, while he hooked up the dash cam to a laptop. Her heart pounded as she matched dates to locations, building a timeline of her husband's investigation. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of entries. He was tracking specific trucks, same plates, same routes, always between 2 and 4 a.m., but they don't match any official Whitcomb schedules. Calder leaned in, his shoulder warm against hers. "Those are Troy's ghost runs, using company trucks but off the books. Virginia's auditors will tear that apart." The dashcam footage loaded slowly, corrupted files rebuilding themselves. Lenore held her breath as the first clear image appeared. A dark road, a truck's tail lights, a glimpse of numbers that matched Mark's ledger. "If this shows what I think it does," she started. "It's not just evidence," Calder finished. "It's a weapon." Her phone buzzed again. "Virginia. Board meeting in 1 hour. Bring everything you have." Lenore looked at the scattered pieces of her husband's last investigation. The ledger, the camera, the careful notes that had cost him his life. She thought of the baby, safely hidden in the hospital's NICU, and all the others who might have been trafficked through those ghost routes. Mark died trying to expose this, she said quietly. We're going to finish what he started. Calder's hand covered hers, warm and steady. We've got what we need now. Personal and corporate evidence. Both lines of attack ready to go. The radio jammer hummed, creating a bubble of safety around them as they prepared their case. Outside, Troy's men might still be searching. But in here, the truth was finally taking shape. The dashcam footage slowly rendered on Calder's laptop screen, the digital artifacts clearing frame by frame. Lenore leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the workbench until her knuckles turned white. Each second of video felt like an eternity as they waited. There, Calder said softly, his finger pointing to a shape emerging from the darkness. The timestamp showed 2:17 in the morning. A Whitcomb truck appeared in the frame, its running lights cutting through a misty dawn. Mark's vehicle had been following at a safe distance, documenting everything. Can you enhance this section? Lenore asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Calder worked the controls, zooming in and cleaning up the image. The truck's number was clearly visible now, matching one of the entries in Mark's ledger. But it was the next frame that made Lenore's heart stop. As the truck slowed for a curve, the driver's face became visible in the side mirror. The image was grainy but unmistakable. Troy Voss, Virginia's head of security, behind the wheel of a company truck at 2:17 in the morning on the day Mark died. Wait, Lenore breathed. Go forward, please. The footage continued. They watched in terrible silence as Troy's truck suddenly braked and swerved, forcing Mark's vehicle toward the guardrail. The camera caught the moment of impact, the sickening crunch of metal before the feed went dark. Lenore's legs gave out. Calder caught her, easing her onto a nearby stool. Her whole body shook, but her voice was steady when she spoke. It wasn't an accident, she said. They murdered him. Troy murdered him because he was getting too close. Calder's jaw clenched tight, his normally calm demeanor hardening into something dangerous. We've got him now. The truck number, the timestamp, his face. It's all there. Lenore pressed her hands flat against the workbench, using its solidity to ground herself. The initial shock was transforming, crystallizing into something harder and more focused. This wasn't just about protecting one baby anymore. This was about justice. For Mark, for all the families torn apart by this trafficking ring. We need to call Virginia, she said, reaching for her phone with steadier hands. The connection was secure thanks to their radio jammer. Virginia answered on the first ring. Lenore put the call on speaker. We have proof, Lenore said without preamble. Troy Voss killed my husband. We have dashcam footage showing him running Mark off the road in a company truck. There was a long pause on the other end. When Virginia spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone seeing years of trust shattered in an instant. Send me everything, she commanded. I'm with my board attorney now. We'll get state authorities involved immediately. Ma'am, Calder cut in. Troy and Sheriff Kopp have teams watching all the main roads. They've got company resources and badges. Then we'll take both away. Virginia's voice was steel. I'm authorizing a complete fleet shutdown and internal audit. Every truck, every route, every shell company. The board attorney is preparing paperwork for state police intervention. Lenore shared a look with Calder. Local deputies might be in Kopp's pocket, but state troopers were another matter entirely. We can't just wait for the paperwork, Lenore said. They know we have something. They'll move against us before official channels can respond. Agreed, Virginia said. We need to draw them out. Force them to act where state authorities can catch them in the open. Calder stepped closer to the phone. If we make them think we're trying to run, they'll have to chase us directly. No time to hide behind procedures or paperwork. Lenore nodded slowly, her mind racing ahead. But we'd need to control where that chase leads. Somewhere the state police can intercept without local interference. The old Canyon Highway, Calder suggested. It crosses the county line after 10 miles. One road in, one road out. Perfect spot for a roadblock. I'll have state authorities positioned, Virginia promised. But you'll have to hold their attention until you cross that line. Can you do it? Lenore thought of Mark, of the infant safely hidden in the NICU, of all the other families who had lost children to this ring. Her fear was still there, but it was fuel now, not a barrier. Yes, she said firmly. We can do it. They spent the next hour planning carefully, mapping routes and coordinating with Virginia. The board attorney was already drafting warrants, while Virginia's auditors dug deeper into Troy's shadow operation. Everything had to be precisely timed. Their flight, the chase, the trap. Lenore studied Mark's ledger one final time, running her fingers over his familiar handwriting. He almost stopped them, she whispered. We're going to finish what he started. Calder's hand found her shoulder, offering quiet support. We've got what Mark never had: corporate backing, state authorities, and proof they can't bury. And we've got each other, Lenore added, meeting his eyes. The radio jammer hummed steadily in the background as they finalized their preparations. The battlefield was about to change shape, transforming from a game of hide-and-seek into something more direct. They couldn't outrun badges and company trucks forever, but they didn't have to. They just had to make their pursuers commit to the chase at exactly the right moment. Lenore checked her phone one last time. Virginia had messaged, "State authorities standing by, make it count." She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and nodded to Calder. It was time to turn their hunters into the hunted. Lenore spread the topographical maps across Calder's kitchen table, her fingers tracing the blue lines of creek beds and watersheds. The afternoon storm clouds were building again, dark and promising. Nature, she realized, might be their strongest ally. If they've got the roads watched, we need another way to control movement, she said, tapping Black Finch Bridge. The creek rises fast during storms. We can use that. Calder leaned over her shoulder, his presence steady and reassuring. That old bridge is the only crossing for 5 miles in either direction. Block it, and they'll have to take the long way around. They drove out to check the creek levels, watching how the water swirled and eddied around the support pillars. Calder's old stock truck, parked nearby, would be perfect for their needs. The bridge's narrow approach meant a jackknifed trailer would completely seal the passage. See how the banks funnel here? Lenore pointed to where the creek bed narrowed. When this floods, the water will have nowhere to go but straight through. The pressure will be incredible. Thunder rolled in the distance as they worked out their timing. The creek was already rising from earlier rains, and the next storm would push it over. They positioned the truck carefully, making it look like normal ranching activity while ensuring it could be moved exactly when needed. Back at Calder's place, Lenore's phone buzzed with updates from Virginia. The Whitcomb board auditors had uncovered a web of shell companies, fake trucking contractors that existed only on paper. Each discovery strengthened their case against Troy and his accomplices. Virginia's counsel is coordinating with state authorities, Lenore told Calder, reading the message. They're building pressure from the institutional side while we work the ground game. They needed to keep Kopp distracted and off balance until everything was in place. Lenore made a few careful calls to trusted neighbors, planting a rumor that she'd hidden the infant somewhere in her house. It was the kind of gossip that would spread quickly in their small community. The strategy worked almost too well. Within hours, Kopp's cruiser was parked openly at the end of her street, his frustration visible even from a distance. He couldn't arrest a rumor, and he didn't have enough cause for a warrant, not without exposing his own involvement. Look at him, Calder said, watching through binoculars from their safe position. He's coming apart at the seams. Lenore nodded, feeling the shift in momentum. For the first time since finding the baby, they weren't just reacting. They were forcing their opponents to dance to their tune. She turned her attention to final preparations. The medical kit was crucial. If things went wrong, they needed to be self-sufficient. The flare gun would serve for signaling or distraction. Most importantly, she secured the dash cam in a waterproof case. That footage was their trump card, their path to justice for Mark. The storm clouds were mounting, dark and pregnant with rain. Thunder echoed through the valley like distant artillery. Lenore checked her phone one last time. Virginia's message was clear and confident. State authorities standing by. Board council has everything in motion. Make it count. Lightning split the sky, and the first heavy drops began to fall. Lenore zipped up her raincoat and nodded to Calder. Time to see if water flows faster than corruption. They loaded their gear into Calder's truck, the rhythm of the rain drumming on the roof matching Lenore's heartbeat. The creek would be rising now, gathering strength like their resolve. She thought of Mark's ledger, of the baby safe in the NICU, of all the pieces finally coming together. The dash cam felt heavy in her pocket, a weight of truth and responsibility. They had transformed from prey to hunters, using terrain and timing to their advantage. The storm wasn't an obstacle. It was their ally, as natural and unstoppable as justice itself. Thunder crashed overhead as they pulled out onto the muddy road. Lenore watched the rain sheet across the windshield, knowing that every drop brought them closer to their moment. The creek would rise, the bridge would be blocked, and their opponents would find themselves trapped between nature's fury and the law's long arm. For the first time since this began, Lenore felt truly ahead of their adversaries. They had legitimate authority through Virginia, evidence that couldn't be buried, and a plan that used the very landscape against their opponents. The storm's power would be their blockade, and the recorded truth would be their killing blow. The wipers beat a steady rhythm as they drove through the intensifying rain. Behind them, the stock truck waited in position, ready to seal off Blackfinch Bridge at the perfect moment. Ahead, the storm gathered strength, as if nature itself understood the justice it would help deliver. Lenore checked her gear one final time, medical supplies secured, flare gun loaded, dash cam protected. Everything was in place. The river was rising, and with it, their chances of ending this fight on their terms. "Ready?" Calder asked, his voice steady over the storm's roar. Lenore nodded, watching lightning flash across the valley. The rain fell harder, and somewhere in the darkness, a creek was becoming a flood, their strongest ally in the fight to come. The text message hit Lenore's phone like a thunderbolt. "Got your girl? Bridge? 1 hour. Bring the baby or don't see her again." Her hands trembled as she showed the screen to Calder. Attached was a photo of Ruthie, terrified but alive, in what looked like the back of Cop's patrol car. The sheriff's calculated cruelty struck deeper than any physical blow could have. "He must have grabbed her when she was walking home from the Thompsons," Lenore whispered, her voice cracking. The world seemed to tilt sideways, reality bending under the weight of this new horror. "She was only 2 blocks away. I thought she'd be safe for that short distance." Calder's jaw clenched as he studied the photo. "We need to think this through carefully. He's desperate, which makes him dangerous." Lenore's fingers flew across the phone, dialing Virginia. The Whitcomb matriarch answered on the first ring, her voice sharp with concern. "Cop has Ruthie," Lenore said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "He wants to trade her for the baby at Blackfinch Bridge." "Those bastards," Virginia hissed. Her rage was palpable even through the phone. "I'm mobilizing everything we have. But Lenore, listen to me. Our local channels are compromised. Troy's people have infiltrated more deeply than we realized. We can't trust any local response." Lenore pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching lightning split the darkening sky. The storm was building, much like the pressure in her chest. "I can't trade one child for another," she said softly. "I won't play their game of sacrificing innocence." "Mom?" Miles appeared in the doorway, his young face etched with worry. "What's happening? Where's Ruthie?" The sight of her son, so brave, so vulnerable, crystallized everything. Lenore crossed the room and knelt before him, taking his hands in hers. "Listen carefully, sweetheart. I need you to be strong right now. Sheriff Kopp has done something very bad, and he has Ruthie, but I'm going to get her back." Miles's lower lip trembled, but he nodded solemnly. "What can I do to help?" "Virginia's driver is coming to take you somewhere safe," Lenore said, pulling out her phone. "First, I need to record something." She pressed record and took a deep breath. "Miles, if anything happens to me tonight, I want you to know how proud I am of you and your sister. You're both so brave, so good. Everything I do for you. I love you more than anything in this world." She stopped the recording and sent it to Virginia, then hugged Miles tightly. "Promise me you'll do exactly what Virginia's people tell you to do." "I promise," he whispered into her shoulder. "But you have to promise to bring Ruthie back." Calder's phone buzzed. The driver was outside. Lenore walked Miles to the door, every step feeling like lead. The rain was falling steadily now, drumming against the roof like nature's own countdown. Once Miles was safely away, Lenore turned to Calder, her face set with determination. "We're not giving them the baby, but we're not giving them Ruthie either." "The storm's picking up," Calder noted, checking his weather radar. "Creek's rising faster than expected. If we're going to use that to our advantage, it has to be tonight." Lenore nodded, pulling up the bridge layout on her phone. "We'll need to modify the original plan. Kopp will be watching for any obvious trap." They spent the next 20 minutes mapping out positions and contingencies. Virginia messaged coordinates for state police staging areas, but they would have to be careful. One wrong move, and Kopp could hurt Ruthie before help arrived. 1 hour, Lenore said, checking the time again. Each minute felt like an eternity knowing her daughter was in Kopp's hands. "We need to move the stock truck into position now, before they have a chance to scout the area properly." Calder grabbed his keys, but paused at the door. "Lenore, are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no turning back." She met his gaze steadily, steel in her voice. "They took my husband. They traffic babies. Now they have my daughter. No more running, no more victims. We end this tonight." They stepped out into the storm, rain immediately soaking through their jackets. Thunder rolled across the valley like nature's own war drums. Lenore felt the weight of the dash cam in her pocket, evidence of Troy's murderous act that had started all of this. Now it would help finish it. "Send the response," she told Calder as they climbed into his truck. "Tell Kopp we'll meet his deadline. Let him think he's won." As they drove through the intensifying storm, Lenore's mind was on Ruthie, her bright, brave girl who must be so scared right now. But she couldn't let that fear paralyze her. Every second mattered now, each moment bringing them closer to either disaster or deliverance. The rain fell harder, and somewhere in the darkness, a creek was rising, nature's own ally in their desperate gambit to save Ruthie and end Kopp's reign of terror once and for all. The rain pelted against metal and wood as Calder secured the final chain on the stock truck. Its massive frame loomed above Blackfinch Bridge, positioned precisely where the surging creek would hit hardest. He double-checked every link, knowing their timing had to be perfect. "Chain set," he called down to Lenore, who stood beneath the truck's shadow. One good yank on this release line and 3,000 pounds of steel comes down. Lenore nodded, her clothes already soaked through. She traced her planned path across the bridge for the 10th time, memorizing every loose plank, every slick spot. The wood creaked beneath her feet as practice steps carried her halfway across. The creek churned 15 feet below, its waters rising steadily with each passing minute. Back on solid ground, she ran through her inventory again. The dashcam felt heavy in her jacket pocket, their proof of Troy's murderous act. The emergency flare was secured at her belt, ready to signal Virginia's people when the moment came. Her fingers brushed the tourniquet in the medical kit, a precaution she prayed wouldn't be needed. Her phone buzzed. Virginia. "I'm 10 minutes out," the Whitcomb matriarch said, her voice tight with determination. "My security team advised against it, but I won't sit idle while Troy uses my company's resources for this filth. I'll position near the north access road. If he tries to run, he'll find me waiting." "Be careful," Lenore warned. "Troy's already killed once." "So have rattlesnakes," Virginia replied grimly. "Doesn't mean I won't step on them when needed." The rain intensified, becoming solid sheets that reduced visibility to mere yards. Thunder cracked overhead as Calder joined Lenore beneath the truck's hulking shadow. She could barely make out his features in the darkness. "Creek's rising faster than expected," he said, checking the water level with his flashlight. "We'll have maybe 20 minutes once they arrive before it peaks." Lenore checked her watch. "Should be any minute now. Remember, let me do the talking. Cop's pride is his weakness. If I can get him angry enough, he'll slip." Headlights suddenly carved through the rain-swept darkness, two sets approaching from opposite directions. Lenore's heart clenched as she recognized Cop's cruiser and Troy's black SUV. They parked, at either end of the bridge, blocking escape routes. The vehicle's doors opened. Troy emerged first, his military bearing evident even through the downpour. From Cop's cruiser, the sheriff appeared, dragging a struggling figure, Ruthie. Lenore's breath caught at the sight of her daughter. Even from this distance, she could see the fear in Ruthie's rigid posture, the way Cop kept his service weapon pressed against her back. "That's far enough," Cop called out as Lenore took a step forward. "Where's the baby?" Lenore forced herself to breathe steadily, to stick to their plan. She moved onto the bridge with deliberate steps, making herself visible. The wooden planks trembled beneath her feet as the creek roared louder. "Funny thing about babies," she projected her voice over the storm. "They leave such interesting evidence, like tracking tags and transport manifests and dash cam footage." She saw Troy stiffen at that last part. "Good." "You're in over your head, Lenore," Cop growled. "This is bigger than you understand." "Oh, I understand plenty," she taunted, taking another step. "I understand how you use Whitcomb trucks to move stolen infants. I understand how Troy here handles problems like my husband. Tell me, Sheriff, what's your cut of the profits? Must be good money to betray everything that badge stands for." Lightning flashed, illuminating the rage-twisting Cop's features. Behind him, Troy shifted uneasily, his eyes darting between Lenore and the rising water. The bridge shuddered as another thunder crack split the sky. The creek's roar grew louder, matching Lenore's hammering heart. She counted seconds in her head, knowing each moment brought them closer to the creek's peak, and their one chance to spring the trap. Through the sheets of rain, she locked eyes with Ruthie. Her brave girl was scared but alert, watching and waiting, just like they'd taught her, just like her father would have been proud to see. The wind howled through the bridge's supports, mixing with the thunder and rushing water into nature's own war cry. Above them all, the stock truck waited like a steel pendulum, ready to swing when the moment came. Lightning illuminated the scene as Calder's signal flare shot skyward. In that same instant, he yanked the release chain, sending the stock truck lurching forward. The massive vehicle tipped, directing the flood's fury straight at the bridge's weakest point. Lenore didn't hesitate. As water crashed against the support beams, she fired her own flare directly at Kopp. The sudden burst of magnesium-bright light blinded him. He staggered, his grip on Ruthie loosening just enough. "Now!" Lenore screamed, launching herself forward. Her boots slipped on the wet planks as she collided with Ruthie, pulling her daughter away from Kopp's grasp. The knife in her pocket found the zip ties binding Ruthie's wrists, sawing through them in 2 sharp motions. A gunshot cracked through the storm. Calder grunted, stumbling as Troy's bullet caught him in the shoulder. He crawled behind a concrete barrier, pressing one hand against the wound. Troy sprinted toward the bridge, his eyes fixed on something in the shadows, an infant carrier they'd planted as bait. The squeal of tires cut through the rain as Virginia's sedan suddenly appeared, ramming into the bridge's guardrail and cutting off his escape route. The bridge gave an ominous groan. Metal screamed against metal as one of the main trusses buckled under the combined assault of flood and impact. Lenore half-carried, half-dragged Ruthie to safety while scanning for Calder. She found him pale but conscious behind the barrier. Blood seeped between his fingers. Working quickly, Lenore pulled the tourniquet from her medical kit, securing it above the wound as rain hammered down on them both. "You're all going down!" Kopp shouted, his words carrying clearly over the storm. "You think you can stop this? We've been moving those brats for years. The whole operation runs through my jurisdiction." Lenore smiled grimly, knowing the dash cam in her pocket was recording every word. On cue, sirens pierced the chaos. State police vehicles emerged from the darkness, their lights painting the scene in red and blue strobes. The water level dropped just enough for officers to secure the area. They moved with precise efficiency, taking Kopp and Troy into custody, while EMTs rushed to treat Calder. In the days that followed, everything unraveled quickly. The dashcam footage and manifests Virginia's team uncovered provided an airtight case. The trafficking ring collapsed as arrests mounted. Virginia made good on her promise, stepping down as CEO and establishing a substantial trust fund for the victims. The baby, her granddaughter, was finally reunited with Virginia's daughter in an emotional homecoming that made local headlines. 2 weeks later, Lenore stood at her husband's roadside memorial. Ruthie and Miles flanked her sides while Calder waited a respectful distance back, his arm still in a sling. She knelt, placing the severed tracking tag at the base of the cross. "We finished what you started," she whispered, touching the weather-worn wood. Rising, she felt Ruthie's hand slip into hers, while Miles leaned against her other side. She met Calder's steady gaze and managed a small smile. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they would face it together. Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.